Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator, where creating your incredible life is the point. So finding your passion and your purpose and what really lights you up. Today, my guest is Roy Osing. Roy Osing is a former president, CMO, and entrepreneur with over 40 years of successful and unmatched executive leadership experience in every aspect of business. As president of a major data and internet company, his leadership in audacious, unheard of ways took the company from its early stage to $1 billion in annual sales. He is a resolute blogger, keen content marketer, dedicated teacher, and mentor to young professionals. As an accomplished business advisor, he is the author of the no-nonsense book series, Be Different or Be Dead. He is devoted to inspiring leaders, entrepreneurs, and organizations to stand apart from the average boring crowd and achieve their true potential. Welcome to the podcast, Roy.
Thank you very much. And I'm grateful that you invited me and give me an opportunity to speak with your audience. So thank you.
Yes, so excited to hear what you have to say. And I already started reading your book, so very excited to share. Yes. So just so people can get to know you, tell us your story, how you started out, how you got to be doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, so well, it's not a very I wouldn't say it's a very exciting story. It's a story of hard work and a perspective that I learned very, very young. The beginning of my professional career was actually in the telecom world, back in the days when communications was a monopoly, and we were looking at morphing ourselves into a competitive organization in that market space. And it occurred to me, I know this was like 4 decades ago, okay? So it occurred to me relatively early in my career that we weren't ready. The business wasn't ready to be taking on aggressive competition, et cetera. And that what we needed to do is, and this is where kind of like my brand started, we had to break away from the stuff that we were doing, break away from what used to work, break away from tradition, just break away from it. And interesting, everybody's using the word pivot these days, and they try and use it on my experience, and it's not. Pivot for me is an incremental thing. I'm talking about literally starting over and crafting newness is what I would say is breakaway. And so I started thinking about this. And so I said, well, look, we need to completely change the culture of the business. Culture was a voice services oriented business. We had to go into the internet space. The business was engineering dominated. We need to get into marketing and customer service, right? We need to move beyond order taking to figuring out what solutions people wanted, et cetera. So I started very, very early on asking myself the question, how can we do things differently? And it was really the sort of genesis of my mindset that was unsettled with the status quo, had to be. Because if we were settled, if we were okay with the status quo, then nothing would change and we would die an agonizing death. I mean, that's what happens with businesses that can't break away from what they're doing in the past. So I've literally spent my whole life working my way around and up an organization, practicing be different or be dead. I didn't know it at that time. I branded it and tagged it later, but it was really that at a very, very young age. And so that's been my journey for 4 decades, trying to figure out how to go against the flow, change the momentum, introduce discontinuities in a world that was so driven by what they were doing in the past. And so I left after a 33-year career and my wife decided I needed to take on some new things. And so I ended up talking about this to businesses, et cetera. I ended up writing a book. The first book I wrote, Be Different or Be Dead, Your Business Survival Guide, was in 2009. So the genesis of the content is 13 years old. Now, I don't know that many books out there that have a shelf life of at least 13 plus years. And so it occurred to me that I should update that. And that led me to my latest book that I published. Actually, it hit June the 1st. So it's nice to talk to you in real time here about it. my objective is to simply try and keep trying to change the conversation in the world, move it from really the inertia and the momentum of the past, and this permeates through the education system and business schools, etc., into this space that I'm calling breakaway, be different, or be dead. And I hit upon audacious because that's who I am. I mean, if you're not audacious, you're going to do some stuff that everybody else does, and it's boring, quite frankly, and it's not very exciting, and who wants to do that? So that's, I'm just banging away at it.
Wonderful. So yeah, audacious is a great word. And, it's so easy to stay with what's familiar because it's comfortable. It's comfy, like a comfy blanket, your old blanket that you don't want to get rid of. It's like, well, it's kind of working, so I just want to hold on to it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I have this expression that says, when the winds are blowing, even a turkey can fly. Okay, so the whole idea is a bird that's not used to flying can fly when the winds are blowing, but when the winds stop blowing, guess what happens to the turkey? It falls to the ground. And so the message here is be careful holding on, because in the short run, what worked for you yesterday may in fact continue to work. Okay, but you're getting sucked in. You're getting sucked into the belief that you can take what worked for you yesterday and it will govern your future. And it's not right. It's bull, quite frankly. Never have I seen that. And what you described there is what I call herd behavior. It's wonderfully warm in a herd. There's no conflict, right? Everything's warm and comfy, etc. It's predictable. Well, guess what? That's not the real world. The real world is harsh and it's painful at times. It's unpredictable and it's chaotic, but I have to tell you, it is an amazing source of an enjoyment and accomplishment. And that's it's risky, right? And it's, you can be afraid, and it's tough. But at the end of the day, my experience is if you figure out that there is actually a way to maneuver through all of this stuff, and again, it's the be different or be dead thing, which we can talk about in more detail. If you can figure that out, and if you can accept it as part of your own journey, and this is important, you can't do this stuff if you don't have audaciousness running through your veins, okay? You have to learn that it's okay to trust uncertainty, to trust discontinuity, and to just go with it. And if you can figure that out, and by the way, pain along the way, tons of pain trying to do stuff that nobody else is doing. If you can do that, then I got to tell you, it's an amazing spot to be. And I hope more and more people sign up for that journey, because if they do, the world will be better, the economy will be better, people will have better careers, they'll have better families, better relationships, because that nugget, that sort of gleam of doing things differently is an amazing source of enjoyment and success. And that's what I've discovered. Look, we didn't get to $1 billion in sales by doing the same old. Let me tell you, we did the same not old all every day, and it was painful. It was really painful in a culture that really didn't want to accept that at first, but just banged away at it and persevere. And that's an important word, perseverance and tenacity. You have to have that.
For sure. And consistency. I found that in my life, consistency, that's even when you don't see something, you think, oh, this isn't doing anything. Consistency in the end gets you where you want to go, even when it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, it's really important. If once you've locked and loaded on what you want to do, you have to stay with it to a degree. Okay, things are going to happen even with an audacious journey outlook along the way, and you got to be able to move with it. I call it planning on the run. Planning is, what are we going to do on Friday? And that's literally the only capability. I laugh when people tell me about their 5-year plans, and I go, really? Have you ever seen the 4th year of a 5-year plan ever show up? I haven't. So what I try and teach people is you need a 2-year plan. It's actually a 24-month plan, right? You need 30 periods, 24 periods of 30 days. That should be your plan. And the reason I talk that way, it keeps you focused on what's happening now. And that's all about execution.
Mhm.
See, people aren't very good executors, right? The 5-year plan gives people permission to put it off until the 4th year, which never shows up. That's why you never get anything done, right? So you
Exactly.
and I know it's what we do tomorrow, what we do in the moment, right? That's going to move us into the 4th year. But actually believing that it's going to show up and we have the time, we have the time to plan. Nonsense. Never worked in my world.
Mhm. So you talked about kind of like moving with however things are going. How do we get ourselves ready from an emotional, mental standpoint to do that flexibility?
Yeah, and yeah, people keep asking me that. Like everybody's looking for the formula, okay? Because we've been taught try and formularize the world, right? Education system tries to teach us that. And I guess my view is, first of all, you have to really be introspective. You have to understand whether you're up for it, whether you're up for a journey that is going to be basically against the flow. That's what this is. If you're not in for that, and you may not know it until you get into it and realize that it's way too uncomfortable and you don't want to do it. But until you actually get in trying these sorts of things, you will never know whether it's for you or not. You'll never know whether you can adapt and create the nimbleness to succeed in a highly chaotic environment. I didn't. I just knew. I just knew basically if we weren't different, we're dead or soon will be. And it all started out with that. And so every time I had a new challenge, first thing I asked myself is, Roy, how are you going to do this differently? How are you going to do this differently from the herd? Because I know how the herd's going to behave. We all went to school. We all read the textbooks. And this is be different or be dead is not textbook stuff. Well, it is. It's Roy's textbook stuff, right? It's the real textbook stuff, right? So I knew how they were going to behave. So I just figured out a different way to do it. It's a mindset, okay? And so what I ask people is if this intrigues you, you need to spend some time thinking about it. You need to spend some time, I don't know, just accepting that it's a journey that you want. Because if you decide to go on it, there's no turning back. And you better be prepared for tenacity, pain, journey, failures, tries, all that kind of stuff, because that's what it's about. It's not a linear line. I mean, my degree's in math, right? I've never solved a business problem with a differential equation, okay? Never. All right, so don't expect this nice, smooth little line that goes, it's going to be like this. That's what chaos is. That's what the real world is. So it starts out with commitment, okay, to actually doing it. And then just letting yourself experience it and shift and break away along the way. That's all you can do.
Mhm.
No easy way.
No easy way. So, I've heard that we have the same thoughts over and over, like for lifetimes. We wake up thinking the same things. We kind of have that same pattern of thinking 80% of the time. So when you're thinking about how can I be different, but you only have this amount of information that you've been looking at for a very long time, how do you find that? Because I've heard of people saying, well, you can innovate by looking at parallel industries or looking at some other
No,
things. Okay, so where do we get these new
absolutely.
ideas?
Well, first of all, look at it's the issue is substitution. We all have limited bandwidth. What I'm saying is you need to give something up. If you want to go here, you need to let be different. Throw something out of your backpack, because you can't take, it's an excuse to say I can't do it because I got too much else on my backpack. I'm saying get rid of that stuff because it doesn't matter. There's a lot of shit that you're doing that doesn't matter. Give it up. I mean, I get tired of hearing people describe themselves as great leaders because of all of the new things they've done. It's a joke. The real power of leadership is the ability to give the right stuff up and unleash the power of the organization to take on the new stuff. But it starts with giving it up. And so what I'm saying is you have your backpack, okay? You need to be different in the backpack. And the only way you can do that is to take something out. So be brave, take something out, get it in there. I don't want to hear your excuses that you can't do it because you got too much to do. That's a cop out. It's a lie to yourself. You're just giving yourself permission to not do something else, right? So I'm saying, hey, you want to do this, you better unload the backpack, get Be Different in there and get going. Now, brings me to the second point. Okay, the world teaches us to copy, okay? In fact, Google, the biggest problem I have with Google is people use it now as what they believe is a source of innovation. Look, you can't be innovative and create anything if you're copying something that you've found on Google. Copycats, copying best practices, copying best in class is intellectually dishonest if you want to tag that as innovation and creativity. You can't. That's impossible. It's not that I'm against benchmarking. Okay, so from an operational point of view, organizations can be more efficient, okay, by copying best practices. But the problem is people now take that and say, okay, now I'm going to copy the strategy. No, because if you copy strategies, all you're doing is staying in the herd. You're just adding yourself to the herd, okay? That's all you're doing. So benchmarking and best practices have no strategic value whatsoever. You need to get rid of them. And so if you think about your life journey, okay, as a strategy, why would you copy somebody else? It's insane. Why would you do that? All you're doing is saying, well, they must know something I don't know. Who cares? The objective is for you to find out something that they don't know. And you can't do that by being a copycat. So if you check my blog out on BeDifferentOrBeDead.com, there are tons of rants in there, man, about the fact that I find best practices repugnant. I think it's the worst concept that has ever been created. And I'm doing that. I'm taking the extreme position on that because unless you shock people out of that modus operandi, you'll never get people to be creative. You know, the best tactic I've ever found to be creative is the statement, I don't know.
Really?
Because if you don't know something, what do you have to do? You have to create a solution, okay, without going to Google, without going to best practices. So I would always say to my clients, I'd say, okay, this is the kind of process we're going to use. And they go, well, yeah, but I don't know how to do that. I said, good. Because if you did, we wouldn't have a conversation about innovation and creativity. Okay, so it's okay not to know. In fact, it's violently important that you don't know if you're seriously interested in being creative with your life, with your journey, with your career. It just starts out with that. Now, I got to tell you, I've never seen an I don't know 101 course at school. Have you?
No.
I mean, seriously. And I'll tell you why, because the people writing the course curriculum are professors who've never run $1 billion a year business. They don't know these little things that are so important in terms of unleashing the power and lighting fires in people. When people would ask me, well, Roy, you mean you're the president of the company, what are we going to do? And I'd go, I really don't know at the moment. What do you think we should do? And they go, what? I've never been asked that question before. So that would give me the opportunity of explaining the nature of innovation. It's not brainstorming, okay? It's first of all accepting that you don't know. Now let's explore the art of the possible. Let's put our fingerprint on the future by trying something today that will hopefully create the future we want. Okay, but it's not about forecasting. It's not about benchmarking. It's not about parallel universes. It's not about blue oceans. It's not that complicated. It's really simple.
Wow. So as you're talking about that, I'm thinking, so what should we be teaching our kids? Like, how should we be teaching our kids?
How should we be what?
Teaching our children.
Oh, teaching our children. Oh, well, yeah, you know what? And there's a number of other people that I've discovered have similar views in this. One of my mentors, who you probably heard of, is the marketing guru, I call him Seth Godin. He has got a lot to say about the purpose of education, et cetera, et cetera. And he and I are very much on this, that the system is producing a lot of cogs, he calls them. A cog is somebody that does, quote, low value work. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. It's easily replaceable, et cetera. And it's that way because we teach people to color inside the lines. We teach them that formulas drive decisions. We teach them not to stand out. I mean, I can remember my mother saying, Roy, don't let me ever hear from your teacher that you stood out, because it was viewed as a negative thing, right? So teaching people that it's okay to fail, teaching people that, yeah, the marks are important, all right, but how you get there, let's try and be a bit creative. So it starts out with loosening up, okay, on the standards and the methods that we use to educate kids. They're not used to failing. Failing is a bad thing, right? Tell that to Michael Jordan, that failing is a bad thing, right? I mean, how many times did he fail? How many games did he lose for the Chicago Bulls? I mean, so many. Did people look at him as a failure? No, he's the icon. He's the absolute icon, right? I get goosebumps when I just think of Michael Jordan doing that sort of stuff. But what vision? At an early age, we need to start talking about that. Look at my 16-year-old grandson is taking an entrepreneur course at school, and I took a look at this course. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's like really pejorative. It's like that pedantic kind of stuff, etc. There's no life in it. There's no emotion. It's just kind of like formularized thing, right? So he's being taught that an entrepreneur looks a certain way. And it's true, some of the entrepreneur might look that way, but that's not what's going to make an entrepreneur successful, right? It's the other stuff, the stuff that you and I are talking about, the audaciousness, the willingness to start the Heart Attack Grill in Las Vegas and serve triple bypass burgers. That's, you heard of that? Yeah, haven't you? Go check him out.
That's great.
This guy started a business, right? Heart Attack Grill. The servers are dressed up as nurses. The bus boys are dressed up as orderlies, and they serve a menu of bypass burgers, triple, quadruple bypass burgers, right? Now, I'm not advocating that for health reasons, but I am advocating it as an example of a guy that just, talk about getting out. He just reinvented, right, the definition of a niche, and he's highly successful. But you know what? You get the people saying, oh, well, that can't be right. Oh, I mean, oh, that's not right. I mean, that's unhealthy. Completely missed the point, right? Completely missed the point. So yeah, we should start early on relaxing things for kids, relaxing it. Now, I'm not saying 1 and 1 is 3. That's not what I'm saying. There are plenty of other ways, because you need those. There are plenty of other ways in terms of creativity that you can start to get kids to realize that it's okay to fail. It's okay to get it just about right. It's okay not to know precisely what you're going to do after you get out of high school. Christ, did you? I didn't. And I was totally okay with it. So yeah, there's a lot that can be done. I think right now there's some of us that are out there kind of banging away at it, but it's a pretty tough goal, because the school system is really entrenched. And I'm not saying it's wrong, okay? Please don't interpret what I'm saying as that. I'm just saying it doesn't go far enough. We need another element into it to help us, to help kids turn into leaders that can be more Steve Jobs out there, that are introducing wonderful stuff to the environment and to the world. We just need that. And we're not getting it right now, in my view.
So I asked this to a lot of people. I see successful people usually have certain habits. Some of them have a morning practice, and some aren't morning people, so they have a other time of the day practice. Do you have things that you do, or thought processes you put yourself through each day that's a consistent thing that kind of gets you in that creative space?
Well, I not really. I don't have a routine, other than I get up early and I hit my mobile device and I write early in the morning. That's when I'm the most creative. But I've always been that way. I'd be to work at like 7 a.m. in the morning and just work through for probably way too many hours, because working hard and putting in the time has always been a value for me, and it's always worked. I worked harder than other people. I just did. And even in the day, when the narrative was slightly different, there were people that kind of wanted to take time off, and I couldn't see the value in time off. Although I always made time to make sure that I was available and I did things with my family. So, for example, I didn't golf on the weekend. First of all, I hate golf, but everybody seemed to do it. But I decided that it was just taking a lot of time away from me and my family, and I worked so hard during the week. Why would I do that on the weekend? But no, I don't have a routine. I guess you're making me think about this in a different way. I sort of have an in the moment process that I mentioned earlier. This whole idea of asking myself, all right, that looks kind of pedantic and boring. How could I approach this differently? And one of the ways that I try and do this is with my grandkids. I have 4 grandkids, love them. One's at university. My youngest is 14, turning into 30. Oh my goodness. Anyways, I try and get them to think differently. And so we have a wonderful relationship. So we will have a conversation about something that comes up at school. I'll get text messages, etc., from my kids, and they'll go, Papa, this is what we were told today. What do you think? Oh my goodness, right? And so I guess that would be that's sort of my way of not prescribing for them, because I don't have a right to prescribe, but I do have a right to give them the benefit of my experience by giving them another perspective, because I'm getting old in the tooth, right? A lot of miles or kilometers, whatever you want to call it. So I always have a conversation about, well, yeah, I get that, but here's another way to look at it. And they go, wow, we weren't taught that. See, that's my point. We weren't taught that. And so having people available to give them other perspectives other than what they were taught is exceedingly important. Parents can play a really important role. Grandparents can, mentors can play a role, because as long as the system is the way the system, it is what it is. And so we need, in spite of that, to introduce degrees of freedom of thought for people. And that's what I'm trying to do every moment I can. And it'll just happen. It's not premeditated. It's just boom. Oh, there's an opportunity. Yeah, I do have an opinion on that. And here it is. And sometimes my kids will agree with me. Sometimes they won't. That's all right. We have a conversation, but they remember at least the argument and the point of view. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's a routine. That's just the way I roll, I guess.
Just the way you operate.
Yep.
So, yeah. And that made me start thinking about what we have been through over the last couple of years, where people are just like, this is the way it is. And this other side, this is the way it is. And the two don't want to meet like at all, it seems. And I'm one of those people I'm real inclusive. So I can hear everybody's thoughts and I can consider them. And then I choose which ones work for me. But not everyone is like that. So when we're out in the world and we're wanting to be creative, get these ideas, get opinions, and also have a conversation, how do you handle those situations where people are just like, this is the way it is?
Yeah. So we've just hit on a weakness of mine. Okay. Because I tend to formulate a course of action and I tend to execute. My experience has always been that success doesn't come from the ideas at all. There's no economic value to an idea without implementation and execution. And yet the world spends way too much time on ideas and plans. Like my world is like execute first, plan second. In fact, I've written an ebook on that. If you want to take a look at that, just to make the point, get the plan just about right. Start executing what you believe. Right. And then modify and revise on the run as you learn more about how well your plan is actually working in the real world. Okay. So right away, I'm not an ideological dude. Right. What I am is somebody that tries to craft a direction. And by the way, I think heading west is a perfectly viable business plan. Now, there are those of you out there that will think I'm crazy. Good. Thank you. I consider that a compliment. And the reason I say heading west is because you have no idea where west you're going to end up until you actually start going in that direction, right? Don't forget the 4th year of the plan never shows up, okay? And so you start going. That's my definition. And so I sit and listen to all these arguments, right? And all these narratives out there. Oh my God, help me. There's so many narratives, so many thin slivers of opinion, et cetera, on things. And they're all academic, theoretical narratives, okay? Until somebody starts actually doing one of them and starts turning it into worth in society or in the economy. And so that's what I'm waiting for. I'm really not willing to have an ideological argument on some of these narratives because I find them quite preposterous without the other end. And so any of the things that I will say is, okay, interesting. How are you going to implement that today? Not 4 years from now. What are you going to do differently tomorrow to actually see that idea get taken to reality? And you know what? They don't know. Nobody knows. And so if you want to look at a benefit of today, it's like today is happening. Okay. Today's narrative is happening. Now, is it changing? Yeah, it is gradually, but there's too many people that have the fourth year narrative out there trying to cause me to change because of a promise and an intellectual perspective that has 4 years worth of out there work to do. I can't buy into that. And so let's do this. If you can't do it, I don't want to talk about it. I can have the intellectual discussion, but I don't want to. I don't want to.
You'd rather observe someone in motion doing something and getting a result.
Yeah, I need proof points. Like I'm proud of the fact that I can sit here and talk about my audacious, unheard of ways. Okay, because I use them to grow a business into $1 billion a year. That's a proof point. So I can talk about, for example, killing dumb rules. I can talk about cutting the crap. I can talk about hiring for goosebumps, which are all tactics that I use. And when people will say to me, "Oh, I never heard of that idea before." I mean, that's not a theory I'm I'm used to hearing about it. I say, "Whoa, it's not a theory. It actually was part of the reason." Here comes the proof point that we got to $1 billion in sales. Now, a lot of these narratives cannot point to that. All they can point to is cognitive stuff, right? And ideological stuff. And I'm intolerant of a lot of that, to be honest. I want to be able to see something happen. And once you've done it, now you can talk to me about its worth. Okay, like let me give you an example. And if there are anybody out there, they're going to hate me for this. But there's this organization called the Extinction Rebellion up here. And their view is, if you don't cut fossil emissions in 24 months, we're all dead. So it's your classic apocalyptic kind of narrative going on. You got to be kidding me, right? People say, well, yeah, you don't like climate change. I said, it's got nothing to do with whether I like it or not. But what I'm hearing is a postulation of an outcome that's absolutely ridiculous with no proof at all. And by the way, if you have something to show for it, to show that it's going to happen so that we can change our behavior, bring it on. Of course, it doesn't happen. You see, it's just that sort of ideological narrative. And so, yeah, I'm not that dude. Never have, probably will never be.
Yeah. So, I when I heard the goosebumps part, so so many times people think so seriously about business, and like you said, the formulations and this and that, and there's personality types that they're more thinking. There's personality types like mine where we're more creative, feeling. So where does the feeling come in? Like, oh, I think if I go in this direction, we're in the right track. Why am I choosing to do this audacious, different thing compared to something else I thought of?
So audacious leadership is all about trying to figure out which tactics work in a real world to drive superlative performance. So that's the other point I want to make here. It's like I've done a lot of kind of like different things in my roles, and people will sometimes point to them and go, "Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of weird. That's kind of crazy. That's cool. Is that why you did it?" And I say, no. If I couldn't demonstrate that there was an economic benefit, a performance benefit from what I was doing, I wouldn't have done it. This is not a world where you do cool things for the sake that they're sexy and cool. And yet that, by the way, that is another narrative, which that's a rat hole we could go down to, but that's not what I did. My struggle was to find the simple things, right, that lit fires in people so that they could execute the strategy of the business better and drive $1 billion in sales, even though we didn't know it was going to be $1 billion. So that being said, so I tried a lot of things. I was a hands-on trier leader. And so I would try a whole bunch of things and recognize that the passion part was absolutely incredible to get results. So it's one thing to talk to somebody who is kind of like their left brain and their intellect is falling over this way so far, they're going to lose their balance and fall down, as opposed to Roy, who was leaning the other way. Okay, right brain, highly emotional, passionate, kind of abstract. They would listen to the right brain, Roy, before any left brainer, to your point about feelings. And that's why. Because to get people to move, to get them to buy in, you had to tap into their feelings. And so the goosebump idea was a crazy idea. So I reasoned relatively early on that if we wanted to create memorable experiences for customers, for example, that we had to hire the right people. We shouldn't be hiring people that would rather be taking inventory or writing HTML coding. We actually needed to find and bring into the organization people that I would call that loved Homo sapiens. They loved them. And what I meant by love them was they were born with this innate desire to care for other people. Like it wasn't just adapted. They were born with the gene, right? So I said, well, okay, how am I going to find people like this? Okay, that's it. I can teach them the business. What I can't teach them is how to love people, right? I can teach you how to smile. I can teach you how to grin, but I can't teach you how to love people. And I reasoned that we needed that characteristic if we wanted to be sort of, the custodians of memorable customer experiences. And so the process I came up with was called hiring for goosebumps. And so as president, I would be involved in a lot of interviewing. I micromanage. To all you guys out there that have been told that delegation is important. No, when it comes to this, when it comes to getting the right talent and resources, you don't delegate it until you actually get it running. So I was in on these panel interviews. Must have been pretty intense and intimidating for somebody to be sitting across the table. You had the president and 3 or 4 other executives sitting there, and we're interviewing them. And I always would get down to my final question. So we'd go through the usual stuff. And I would say, okay, Kimberly, do you love humans? And you would lean back because you knew it was a trick question. It's just that you didn't know where I was going to go with it, right? So you would say, yes, Roy, I do. And I would say to you, okay, I want you to tell me a story that would prove to me that you love people. So there were 2 types of answers I would get back. One type was from the person that kind of got intellectually where I was going, but wasn't really fussy about humans. And you could tell in the nature of the story that came back. It kind of left you cold. But the other person who really got it, who honestly felt the way I was describing it, they would tell a story that was deep in emotion, passionate, warm, emotional, and believable. And guess what that story did? Gave me goosebumps. In fact, I got goosebumps just talking about it right now.
Me too.
So I would hire that person and teach them the business. And in a way, it's kind of like what Richard Branson does with buying businesses. He has created a customer service infrastructure that he buys businesses and transplants that in. What a great idea. Sort of the similar thing, which I recognized later on, but earlier on, I just wanted people that cared, right? So the reasoning was pretty obvious too, because the teamwork went up because these people worked so well together because they cared for one another, right? Anyways, that's my goosebump story. Worked like a damn. People say, did that work? I got $1 billion. Sorry. It was one of a few things that we did, but yeah, it worked.
Well, to get $1 billion, you have to know what it is people actually want. So we've been through a lot of changes lately. Different, age groups seem to want different things.
True.
How do you know what people want? How do you change and be different in a way that gives the public what they want, or your customers?
So it starts out with what I what I tagged cravings. Like as a chief marketing officer, because I was a CMO when I left, it occurred to me that people's needs are basically satisfied. I mean, the organizations that are actually competing to satisfy needs are having a pretty difficult time out there because everybody's needs are fundamentally satisfied. So if you're going to compete in that space, you've got lots of competition. Price tends to be really significant in the purchase decision, and prices are always under pressure to go down. Well, we know that's a commodity business being described, and it's not a very pleasant place to be. So I reasoned that no, what we have to do, and I got onto this customer secrets tag many years ago, which is a source of customer loyalty and customer service. But I've morphed it a little bit from a marketing point of view to talk about cravings. So what I would say is, no, we need to be able to satisfy what people need, but that's just the baseline. Everybody's going to be doing that. And what they're going to be doing is competing on price to do that. We need to be in the cravings business. We need to be the business that identifies what people crave, what they desire, what their secrets are, what they covet, what they lust for, all these heavily emotional words, right? Because that space is small, it has relatively less competition, and it's relatively price insensitive. So we could find those cravings, right, and target our efforts there, then life would be good. And then we just keep segmenting the market and finding groups, et cetera, et cetera. Cravings are people that relate to us as humans. They're, what kind of wine do I like? Where do I go on vacation? What do I do with my family? What do I do with my friends? Where do I go for a meal? You know, what are those sorts of things in my life that nobody ever asks about? Nobody tries to mine, right? You know, they're so busy bundling components of products together. This isn't bundling in any way. This is like creating packages of value that satisfies cravings. And so that's the challenge we have. So the next time you're talking to a client, yeah, of course, deal with the needs piece. Like they need internet, but go beyond that and don't ask them what they crave. That's not what I'm saying. But carry the conversation into that area, right? Where you're getting to get a bit more of what makes that person tick, and keep that, right? It should form a repository. I call it a cravings repository of data that marketing people and service people and leaders can use when dealing with one specific individual, because the world is billions of individuals. It's not a singular group of average people with average characteristics, because mass marketing doesn't work anymore. Actually, it never did. It was really done because marketing was lazy at the time and they just wanted to flog stuff at the masses. But that's not where we are right now. So think about the markets of one, think about, yes, needs, but then go to the cravings level. Create a cravings file. Like, I'm not talking high-tech stuff. Create a paper. This is what I did. I would have cravings. I call it a secrets binder in those days. It would be a secrets binder on my major customers, and I would start there and then work down the stream. And I always referred to it. If I had a service problem, if I had a cravings file, a secrets file, bang, I had it there, and I would always use that as a way to recover from the mistake we made. Extremely powerful. And guess what people did? They remember how you recovered. They didn't remember about the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Easy peasy.
That makes sense. So I know as a business person, I've been told, okay, when it comes to marketing, the first thing they want you to do is create an avatar and know who you're marketing to, and, you know, really niche it down. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, when you talk avatar to me, you're giving me techno speak. What I say, because I don't care about that, what I say is you're a human I'm talking to. I'm going to try and get to know you as well as I can. And if you're willing to trust me in providing me details about you and what's going on with you, great. If not, then I haven't earned your trust. It's on me. So it's more about the process as opposed to the outcome. And, you know, it reminds me of, people would say to me, Roy, what do you think about my social media strategy? And I'd go, I don't have an opinion. And they go, what? You don't have an opinion? I said, well, let me explain. First of all, you haven't created a context for me. What are you trying to achieve? Okay, as a business, what are your communications objectives? If you were to do that and then show me what you're doing on social media, I would at least have the basis to give you an opinion. And I guess I would answer it the same way to the avatar thing. I have no idea whether that works, because in order to evaluate that, you really have to understand what it is people are trying to do. And the nice thing about today is there are so many options to pursue, to execute. That's where we do the work. Okay, we just don't do social media because everybody's doing social media. We just don't do avatars because, I mean, if you want to be part of the herd, right, then yeah, go ahead and do that. And you just increase the herd by one. Okay. But I have no idea. We need to be more circumspect. I call it chasing tactics and chasing yummy incoming. That's another concept I created, is yummy incoming. It's the stuff that coming at you and you're being barraged, and it's largely technology, and you start chasing it because somebody has told you that it's something that you need to chase, and you believe them, you go chase it. And as a result, your resource return goes down, your success goes down, because you're so busy chasing what other people think you should do, as opposed to spend time on your context, learn what it informs you to do, now go chase, and then be selective, and then test, measure, test, and change. And that's kind of like the planning on the run execution piece that we spoke of earlier. But yeah, there's so many solutions running around looking for a problem to solve. There are just tons of them. and actually being able to cut through that clutter is a hugely important thing for leaders to do. It really is. I used to throw people out of my office if they had a to-do list of 12 items. They were proud of the fact that they had 12 items on their to-do list. I thought it was terrible, and I'll tell you why. If you have 12 things to do, you don't understand your strategy. Roy's rule of three things. Focus on three critical things, not 12 possible things. And unfortunately, the to-do list mentality gets people going after this 12 list to do possibility thing, right? Because it makes them feel better because they got a long page. All right, I can put mine on a Post-it note, 3 things, boom, 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 and that's it. End of story. But that's the focus we need. And that's the other reason why not a hell of a lot gets done, is we're not very good, and especially from startup CEO's perspective, we're not very good at focusing. We chase, hence yummy incoming.
I love that. I love that. I'm learning so much from you.
Oh, well,
So
thank you.
let's talk about your book, your newest book.
Yep, my latest book, really exciting because the official publication date was June the 1st or May the 31st, actually. And it's the 7th book. It's called my 7th book. It's called Be Different or Be Dead: The Audacious, Unheard of Ways I Took a Startup to $1 billion in Sales. So my writing journey, because I'm not an author, you see, this is interesting. I'm a kind of like a business dude that has got decent communication skills, as opposed to an author looking for something to write. So what I learned to do is all the stuff we're talking about is stuff that is part of my history, part of what I did. And all I'm doing is creating a compendium of that, trying to use it as a basis for teaching another perspective on how to get things done. So that started in 2009 when I wrote my first book. It was called Your Business Survival Guide, because at the time the economy was really, really bad, and being different is a survival tool. It's also a growth tool, which is really the focus on my latest book. I decided to update the content and focus it more around audaciousness leading to growth. But in between, I've written, I guess, 5 ebooks that has taken a deep dive on Be Different. So there's Marketing in the Storm is one. There's another one on careers. There's a couple of on leadership, etc. And so people can take a look at that in more granular detail. But this one sort of was appropriate in terms of the time, because I learned so much about my own work by just doing things like this. Like just your questions quite frankly, if you don't know this, but I'm making notes. I can make notes without even, so I make notes about stuff because what you say has prompted an answer that I've never given before. And that's a process of learning about, you go through that with your stuff, right? And so the seventh book was kind of like, it was time to kind of put that down, put a stake in the ground and update it. So it's fundamentally the same structure. It's just different and hopefully fresher content, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, and it's, I guess it's too early to tell, but I hope it makes a difference. Like, it's not about how many books I sell. It's about how influential it was in terms of changing people's perspectives on life and how to do things. And I encourage people to contact me all the time and tell me what's going on with you. It's not just about visit the website. It's, I got a Gmail address, email me. Tell me about your only statement. Let's talk about that. Tell me about, what you're experiencing, and let's and if there's anything I can do to help, I'd be happy to.
All right. Well, thank you. And so why don't you tell us what your website is and where we find your book?
So the website is DiFFERENT.com. And there's three pieces of the site that I just want to mention. First of all, I blog every week. And so I'm blogging constantly, back since 2009. So there's a lot of blogs there. So there's a search engine. If you want to know about Yummy Incoming, you can find them. And I try to blog. I blog all the time on my stuff. The more I learn about it, the more I did. And I come at the same subjects different ways because people learn differently, right? So the blog is huge. There's a page on my book, so you can go there and you can see the 7 books. You can get the descriptor, and then there's purchase links if you want to do that. But as I said earlier, there's also my Gmail address, roy.osing@gmail.com. And I'm totally happy to have a conversation with anybody that wants to email me and shows interest in learning more about this or asking questions about it, whatever. I mean, having that engagement for me is really, really important. So I would welcome people to come visit me in any way that they want.
Beautiful. Thank you. So now a personal question. What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
Growth. It's a continuum. That's the one thing that's never changed for me. It's always been the driver of what I do. I'm very unsettled with status quo. I'm not relatively young anymore. And so, but one thing that hasn't changed, I'm constantly looking for new things to do, for new ways to approach things. And I apply it to my family life. Let me give you an example. My background is Norwegian, right? And so we've taken each of our grandkids to Norway when they turned 11, just to get them a bit exposed, right? So I'm known as Papa Troll, right? Because I have this infatuation with trolls, and all my grandkids have got trolls. In fact, if I showed you in my condo up here in Whistler, the trolls are on the fireplace railing, all my trolls. So I started a club, and it was called the Trollites Club with the grandkids. And so I was president, of course, and my oldest was vice president. So we had the Trollites Club, where we would meet any chance we can get together, and we would have a little tent that they built when they were younger, and we'd have a club meeting. And it would be to talk about the trolls in Norway and what we're doing in Europe and all that kind of stuff. And where are we going to go next? It's just a blast. They have never forgotten it. In fact, we got Trollites t-shirts. They still have those t-shirts. I still have mine. Insane, right? They will never forget that. That's an example of trying to continue to live the journey of looking for different ways of doing things and capturing the hearts of minds of people by coming up with crazy things that appeal to what you said earlier, their feelings. And so I'm the be different Papa, and I'm edgy, and I swear sometimes, and I get heck for it, but it is what it is. And so that continues to excite me every day, the opportunity to do that. And I take the odd day off. There's seemingly more days off the older I get, but that's continues to be a drive. It will always be a drive for me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And thanks for being on the podcast today and sharing your wisdom and your different ideas.
You're very welcome. And again, I'm grateful to have an opportunity to do with this. And thank you for doing such a good job. I thought you did a great job. It was easy for me. You did all the hard work trying to figure out the questions to ask, because I probably got more information than I need to. But it's
Got
there.
it. Got it. Well, thank you so much. I have one last question before we finish. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Well, this is really going to surprise you. It's called Be Different. I mean, come on, the source of energy is not being in the herd. The source of energy is getting out of that herd, however painful it may be, and learning that it's a journey that's worth investing in. Please. I mean, not just for your personal life, carry it into your career, carrying it into whatever position you own in your business. If you're an entrepreneur, think this way. Get the hell away from Googling best in class. That's the takeaway from this podcast, is be different. And there are resources available for you that I've built over the last 12, 13, 14 years for you. I'd love to be a part of your journey. Come on.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Roy. And we'll talk to you again soon.